So in this segment, we're going to be talking about how school meals are at risk due to a shortage of UK lorry drivers, also known as HGVs, heavy goods vehicle drivers. And so, the loss of 100k in hauliers, sort of 100,000 hauliers, as a result of COVID and Brexit, could leave cooks relying on emergency standby ingredients, and that's mainly frozen foods. So, stuff would be garlic bread, fish fingers, stuff like that. Really, it won't be. That means that they won't have as much access to. In theory, they wouldn't have as much access to fruits and vegetables, but based on what I read in this article, that doesn't look like to be the case. That they should be able to access some decent stuff at least. So going into the article, school meals could be disrupted for the remainder of this term by delays, so the rest of the summer term, by delays and shortages of food supplies across the country as a result of a dearth of lorry drivers. So we previously discussed how the shortage of lorry drivers has impacted the agri-food industry. Agri-foods, we've discussed how it affects agri-foods, hospitality, supermarkets, other places, and now it's going to impact schools. So all of those people who voted for Brexit to, for their children or whatever, so they could have a better life, well done, mate, because they might not get the school lunch they actually want because of you guys. So congratulations. So the warnings came as industry representatives told Boris Johnson that the driver shortage exacerbated by the Brexit pandemic was causing a crisis in the food chain supply, which is something we have spoken about a lot previously. Channel 4 did some good reporting in this regard, going to farms and other places to look at what's going on. So Sheffield City Council wrote to schools last week warning they may have to rely on emergency standby ingredients such as fish fingers and dried pasta to feed their pupils. And the question is, what happens when these emergency standby ingredients are gone? Because they won't last forever. You only have a limited amount of freezer space. So what happens when those go out? Or what happens when kids don't like fish fingers for the third day in a row? What do you do then? Some cooks would be supplied with 2 days worth of standby ingredients, so 2 days isn't a long time in case the supply chain failed, and that's definitely going to happen next year. When import checks happen, if the British government does those checks, you're going to see food shortages, no doubt. You're going to see massive, probably more problems next year than you will this year if the UK actually implement proper checks like we're supposed to. Some last minute changes may have to be made to menus. This is clearly not what anyone would want in the last weeks of the school year, the letter said. And the other thing is, what about children who have dietary requirements? How are they going to be impacted by this? They might not get the stuff that they need to eat because of the fact that they might have allergies to things. They might not even like the foods put on the table. And before anyone's like, oh, when I was in school, I ate what I was given, or I didn't eat at all. Like, times have changed, my friend. We don't hit kids with a cane anymore. The horse and buggy has gone. The dinosaurs are extinct. Times have changed, okay? I don't want to hear it from anyone in the comments. So the UK road haulage sector has a shortage of 100,000 lorry drivers. We already had lorry driver problems before. It's been a Europe-wide problem, but the Europeans are dealing with it far better, especially since we've sent home a load of lorry drivers and they're not coming back here unless it's to do jobs here, sort of in passing. A warning to the Prime Minister was sent from this is something we've spoken about in the past, from the Food and Drink Federation, British Frozen Food Federation, Federation of Wholesale Distributors, Cold Chain Federation, Meat Producers Association, and the British Beer and Pub Association. So you have multiple different industry leaders coming together and asking the Prime Minister to do something about the issues we are facing. It says, we firmly believe that the intervention from the Prime Minister Cabinet Office is the only way we will be able to avert critical supply chains failing at unprecedented and unimaginable levels, the group's letter said. So what you can see here is that they're telling the Prime Minister there is no way around this. You have to change visa requirements to allow drivers in from the EU to work within this country. You have to drop visa requirements. Settled status is another issue as well. Because some people don't have settled status. I know the deadline's gone, so you got to imagine if you're coming in fresh from the EU and you have no prior work history in the UK, that would be an issue. And the simple fact is, these people may not want to come here because they don't feel welcome. I mean, the only good thing that's come out of the shortage of lorry drivers is that lorry drivers have gotten a decent pay rise. But once in a labour shortage, it's the worker who benefits. But what happens when regardless of increasing wages, you don't have enough staff? Even if you start training up more lorry drivers, that takes time, and not everyone wants to do that. So then you have more problems there. You have to get in other people, I don't want to say foreign people, but non-UK nationals to come in to do this work, because there's a shortage of people within the UK, a huge shortage, 100,000 driver shortage, in order to deal with the problems the country's facing. Multiple different industries rely on heavy goods vehicles to transport goods. That's how goods typically go around in the modern era, because they're big, they can carry a lot of stuff, and they're good for long distance travel. Somehow the government haven't figured this out. Rod McKenzie, feels like we've spoken about him a lot as well. The managing director of policy at the Road Haulage Association said the shortage of lorry drivers was a critical issue and was having a real impact on on a whole range of different sectors. This is something we have spoken about with regards to agri-foods, with regards to pubs, with regards to other things, because you rely on heavy goods vehicles, especially in agri-foods where things have a limited shelf life unless they're frozen or chilled. So Rod McKenzie told The Observer, "We desperately need the government to help us by loosening the current immigration restrictions and speeding up lorry driver testing." So obviously, I'm guessing what he's saying in the speeding up bit is they want more tests to be available. COVID is a problem with regards to that, and that's another government failure. But the simple fact is the immigration restrictions are another massive barrier to people who are already trained as lorry drivers in Europe to come to the UK. So about 15,000 European drivers have left the UK since the start of the year, and about 30,000 heavy goods vehicles tests were lost last year because of COVID. So you can see the main issue is, by the looks of things, the lack of tests being available, but we also don't know how many European drivers have left in previous years, so that's another problem. So these numbers added to a historic shortage of 60,000 drivers, which meant the shortfall was now more than 100,000 drivers. So that's a maths for you there, if you guys can be bothered to figure that out. The government needs to act fast before food supplies get to a critical level. I would argue that they are near enough a critical level as is. If you go to certain supermarkets, you can't find the stuff you want. My mum's got a real big problem finding onions right now. If you go to multiple supermarkets, you might be able to avoid those problems. But then, you're making multiple trips, which is time consuming and really annoying to do that. I know that firsthand. But point being is that if supermarkets can't get basics and have to put up pictures on where the food should be, it's quite an embarrassing situation. Rod McKenzie said it was completely unsurprising that school meals were now being affected because, that's the thing here. They're all kind of combined together when the most critical element, which is the lorries, aren't there. That affects all of it, and what that means is certain things are given priority over other things, and typically that would be maybe the ones that are the shortest journey or the highest paying jobs. So they mentioned Tesco's, I think, at the bottom of this article, which Tesco's are looking for ways around this. So they may pay for people's visas, or they may just pay more for the lorry drivers, for the contracts or whatever with these companies, in order to make sure Tesco's doesn't run into any problems. But these companies that sell food to schools may not be able to do that, because that would mean charging the schools more, which may not be viable, and that's a problem here. Like I said, in a labour shortage, people can benefit, but when it comes to something as critical as lorry drivers, you can see we're having massive problems here. And it's impacting children. The children that people who voted Brexit said they would be the main beneficiaries of it. It's a bit embarrassing now, isn't it? Wholesale distributors Bid Food, which supplies frozen and dry food to a catering firm that supplies Sheffield schools, has faced many difficulties with driver shortages. So you can see that the wholesalers are having problems, and that has a massive negative effect on the other aspects of the chain. If your wholesaler runs out of stuff, you have to find another wholesaler, which may not be possible, which means you can't get the stuff you want. Some drivers have arrived late and some have failed to arrive at all, so that's interesting. Arriving late would make sense if they have loads of jobs to do and they don't have a lot of time. Failing to arrive at all is really weird, like where have they gone? Did they disappear into a portal? This is according to the Sheffield City Council, not the portal stuff. That's stuff I added in, of course. Companies supplying them with meat, poultry, fruit and vegetables have not been affected, as these use vans rather than 18-ton lorries. So the requirements around driving a van and driving a lorry are quite different. I think you can drive a van with a standard UK licence, so long as it doesn't go above a certain size, but with a lorry you need a special licence for that. So that's a good thing, meat, poultry, fruit and vegetables not being impacted. But there are other aspects of their food being impacted to the point where they may have shortages and will have to use emergency ingredients like fish fingers. I love fish fingers, don't get it wrong, but you can't give that consistently to kids. They're not good for you anyways. The challenge of driver shortages was being felt right across the supply chain. Andrew Selly, the chief executive at Bidcorp UK Bid Foods parent company. Talking to The Observer, he said, "We're asking the government to relax driver hours, so I'm assuming that means they want the drivers to be able to work more hours, which may not be necessarily the safest. I don't know if it's mandatory that they can only do a certain amount of hours or if there's an opt-out or an opt-in, whatever it would be in this situation, because there are for other jobs where you can only work a maximum amount of hours unless you opt out of the European rules around that. I can't remember the exact term. I'm sure someone will put it in the comments. But so that's interesting. I don't know if they can actually do that because there are rules around like bus drivers having to work a certain amount of hours and take a certain amount of breaks for health and safety reasons. So he goes on to say, as well as add them to the list of skilled workers to enable recruitment of drivers from the EU talent pool. That's interesting. I mean, this has to happen though. We have to allow have easy access for EU drivers to come to the UK to work for UK firms because we're having massive problems already, and this will only get worse, especially as we go into next year. Which obviously we're a long way away from next year, but once we start doing import checks, that's when it gets really bad. Way worse than it will now, I think, in my opinion. So he goes on to say, in order to get things moving, it's imperative that the government invests in the backlog of heavy goods vehicle tests, currently stopping thousands of potential drivers becoming available. So this is the industry saying to the government, we need your help, but the government telling industries that, well, this is your job to fix it, your private industry, you have to solve the problems you have. Stop expecting state aid unless your name is Nissan. Our latest recruitment drive for HGV drivers has proved very successful, but there will be a limit on how many people actually pass these tests and how many people actually want to be heavy goods vehicle drivers, especially since there are fitness requirements around becoming a heavy goods vehicle driver. It's a very lonely job. You're on your own most of the time driving from, vast distances. There was that guy, Colin, the van driver? No, I don't think that was his name. The one who mugged off Rees-Mogg on LBC radio because he actually drives a van. Something the van driver, I can't remember his name, but it's a lonely job. He's driving cross country, which is something that these people will do. You might not see your family for days. It's very difficult. This is the Sully going on to say, however, we have a large number of applicants currently awaiting their tests before they can start working for us. So this is industry asking the government for help, but the government probably won't do it. But this is a way for the government to put their money where their mouth is, which is saying that we want to invest in British people to do these jobs. We don't want Johnny foreigners coming here. Well, put the money on the table and help these industries out. So Jane Dunn, Sheffield City Councillor responsible for education, children and families, said the council was working hard to put contingency plans in place to mitigate the impact any delays may have. But the thing is, there's only so good your contingency plans can actually do before you hit a snag, which is what you're going to hit. Once those frozen ingredients run out, those kind of fish fingers and pasta and whatever. Do you freeze pasta? Can you do that? I don't know. That's odd. I don't think you can. But once those ingredients, those emergency ingredients run out, what happens then? That's a problem. So this is mentioning Tesco's here at the end, which says Tesco, the UK's biggest retailer, said earlier this month that it had drawn plans to deal with the shortage of HGV drivers. So it could be helping drivers get through any visa issues they have, paying for visas or whatever, or it could be they're just going to pay companies more to get access to their lorry drivers and therefore causing more problems in other areas. But it won't cause as many problems to Tesco's, who have a lot of money and do generally quite well, compared to the council, who may not be able to pay more for lorry drivers, around contracts and stuff like that, because they're a council, they're very limited, especially due to government cuts to council. So in conclusion, what can we learn from this article? That most likely school meals are going to be impacted because of the government, because of all the xenophobia and the government's kind of arrogance and lack of desire to put heavy goods vehicle drivers on the special requirements visa list. By that I mean the fast track visa list. That's very odd that they haven't done that. I don't understand why they haven't done that, considering we desperately need lorry drivers. And as food shortages become more apparent, more people will notice the impact of Brexit. And I just don't understand what these people are doing. Anyways, look, I'm going to leave it there. I feel bad for these kids who might not get the foods that they should have because of some of their parents are idiots and they decide to vote for things they didn't understand. But anyways, look, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.